So hi, my name is James Currence. This is my final lecture recital based around my dissertation, a study of Eugene Bote's 18 etudes in the form of improvisation for horn and new preparatory etudes for the works of Bote. Just a few initial words. I wanted to go ahead and give thanks, first of all to Maggie Schomfeld and the Barth House for allowing me to record in their beautiful space. I had a blast. It was very easy to work with them. Just wanted to give my thanks to them. Thank you to the members of my committee who could be here today, as well as the ones who will be seeing this over a recording, as well as thank you to my partner Maggie, without which I probably wouldn't be able to do all of this. So I just wanted to go ahead and give my thanks and get that on out there. So why am I here today? What am I here to tell you? First, I'm going to give a brief snippet of the composer's life. Afterwards, I will showcase 5 of the 18 etudes from the 18 etudes en forme d'improvisation pour corps. From now on, I'll be referring to that in its English title, the 18 etudes in the form of improvisation for horn. During this showcase, I'm going to discuss my analysis of the 18 etudes. You'll see what that would have looked like in terms of how it's presented in my dissertation. And I will also be alongside it be showcasing my recordings of the 18 etudes where I can, as well as the 3 new etudes that I've written for this project. I will be performing those 3 for you here today. So to help understand what the project was for me is I would like to describe this as an A-frame project, where it takes 2 large points at the bottom that require a lot of research and a lot of dedication to, where eventually they coalesce and become something larger. The 2 bottom tiers are going to be my recordings of the 18 etudes. I recorded all 18. All of them are single take. It took quite a long time for me to do so. And then the second part of that is the motivic analysis of those 18 etudes. I'll discuss what I did in order to analyze these etudes later, but that was another huge portion of it. The top of the A-frame results in these new preparatory etudes on the works of Bote. In my experience, Bote's music is primarily for advanced horn players, but there's not really a bridge between beginner to intermediate horn playing and advanced horn playing. It's just accepted in our world that you just spend the time and woodshop these pieces out, and I feel like there's easier ways to go about doing so, which is why I created the etudes. So, going in and getting into it. Who is Eugene Bote? I'll go ahead and give a brief description of the composer. I won't go into too much detail, but I'll just cover the big points. Eugene was born in 1905 in Nice, France, to a musical family. His father, Umberto Bote, was a violinist. His mother, Honoria Molina, was also musical. I believe played the piano, but there's not much written on her. He studied with his father initially at a young age, playing violin. Eventually, towards what we might think of as middle school, high school, he leaves. His family leaves. They go to Italy for a few years, and he studies there. Eventually, he returns to Paris and enrolls in one of the Royal Conservatory of Music, earning awards and premier prix in violin, conducting, and composition. After he wins a large series of awards, including the Prix de Rome around 1934, he gets awarded a job conducting the Opéra Comique de France from 1939 to 1951. After which he teaches at a conservatory in Valenciennes, France, which is to the northeast of Paris. It's almost on the coast of France and Belgium. And he teaches there for a little over 20 years, from 1951 to 1975. While he's there, he meets his second wife, Nelly Baud. She is a professor at the conservatory in Valenciennes. They meet, they fall in love, they marry, they have a daughter. The daughter's name is Cécile Deplace Bote, who is still alive. There was a famous trip done by Dr. Kuiper Rushing from LSU where she goes and she visits Cécile. They have a lot of conversations, and she's able to learn more about the private life of Eugene Bote, which for a long time there's been almost nothing written on. So Eugene Bote, while he created most of his compositions, like his major compositions would have been created during his major composition stint between the late 1920s and the mid-1940s. That's where he writes a lot of his most groundbreaking works, such as En Forêt for horn and piano, which is written in 1941. He creates a lot of etude series around the middle of the 1950s all the way up through the 70s for most wind instruments. And he utilizes this compositional technique called adoptive transcription. It is a thing that is penned by Dr. Xingfang Liu from the University of North Texas in 2015. In a polite way, it is essentially copy-pasting music. He takes melodies from previously written works and he inserts them into new creations of his. Most of his etudes are going to be through composed in nature. Essentially what this means is that the material he writes largely goes from point A to point B. Very rarely does it repeat itself. Most of the etudes are like this. He retires from the conservatory in 1975, continues to compose a little bit, not terribly much, and ends up passing away in 1991. For anyone who is interested in learning more about Bozza, I would recommend Jason Voss's dissertation, A Study of Compositional Technique and Influence in 3 bass trombone pieces. In that dissertation, he actually takes to task some of the historical documents that we know of, that we use for Bozza's bibliography, and he even goes so far as to dispute some of those sources and kind of give his own opinions towards those sources. I don't necessarily disagree with him. I don't necessarily agree with him on all things, but I do respect his work in that, and I think it's worthwhile checking out. Okay, 18 etudes in the form of improvisation for horn, written in 1961. This was written after most of his written works for horn and piano, except for one, being Entretien, written in 1975. Entretien is much different than the others in the sense that it plays more into mid-century atonality and different extended techniques for the horn, most of which he usually didn't include in his earlier pieces. If I had to give a comparison, he did write a second set of etudes called Graphisme. He wrote those, again, for most wind instruments, but they would be more akin to what we would consider modernly written music, with a lot of extended techniques, a lot of squiggles instead of straight up and down notes. It's very, very difficult. It is kind of worth delving into on its own separate project. I will not be going into that here. A sizable group of the etudes are derivative of other Bozza works for the horn. There are some that take melodies from some of the bassoon music for Bozza. There's some that take from alto sax. This all owes to that idea of adoptive transcription, where he'll take a melody from some alto sax piece that he wrote 20 years prior, and then he'll just insert the melody into a completely different etude, but for a completely different instrument. The series of etudes I would consider to be very challenging for horn players. I wouldn't recommend this for anyone pretty much under the age of advanced college level players. They've pushed me pretty much to the edge of my limits as far as a horn player, and I'm thankful for that. There are excerpts included in the etudes, notably Maurice Ravel's Piano Concerto in G. The famous horn excerpt from that composition is featured in etude number 8, and Richard Strauss's Till Eulenspiegel is hidden away quite nicely in etude number 18. So my analysis of the 18 etudes. This makes up that second pillar of the A-frame that I was talking about. What I did was I separated each potential theme from the 18 etudes. And I matched them up with the over 300 samples from Dr. Kuiper-Russian's catalog, a thematic index on the works of Bozza. Initially I created this color-coded etude that I thought looked rather pretty, but was admittedly kind of confusing to look at and understand what you were taking in. Thankfully, I was shown that it's easier just to bracket it out and then label the themes. And we'll see some of that in the presentation later. My reasons for matching up the samples of music was to learn which of Bozza's patterns were most prevalent, which patterns of his were most idiosyncratic to his compositional style. The knowledge I could take from learning from those connections I could take into the creating of the new etudes, which I did later. Okay, we're just going to go ahead and get right into it. The first of the 5 selections from the 18 etudes is I selected etude number 1. It's a great place to start. This is the one that most horn players will usually look at. They'll spend 2 minutes looking at it, and they'll probably just discard it because they'll be like, well, this is just derivative, this is just on Foray, and they'll just, why don't I just go play the original source material? To your right, you will see, if you can see it, you'll see the original etude written out. Horn players will obviously see that it looks almost exactly like on Foray. To the left, you'll see what my analysis would have looked like, where I took out the individual themes themselves, listed them in a list format, and then wrote down the similarities with each of the catalog numbers from Quaker Russian's catalog. When it comes to describing how I thought of the themes as being similar, there was 2 schools of thought. The first one was, okay, am I looking for exact facsimiles? Am I looking for copy on copy? Is, exactly like adoptive transcription based? If I were to do that, it wouldn't create that much of a list. There's not that, there's enough to create something to go on, but there just is enough to make a full project out of it. Instead, I went after themes that were slightly similar. Something that could be, okay, this could be something where maybe Botha had this idea in his mind when he translated it into this other piece. Not all of them are going to be exact carbon copies. For etude number 1, I want to go ahead and play what the original would have sounded like. And skip the ad. The selection I'm going to play to you after this ad plays is a selection from On Foray, performed by Jennifer Montone. I felt as a great recording of the piece. Is it going to hit me with that second ad? No, we're good. Afterwards, this is etude number 1 from the 18 etudes in the form of improvisation for horn. This is my recording. Try and see about finding all the different similarities between. Great, so that's pretty self-explanatory. This is just etude 1. It's a great starting point for most people getting involved in these etudes. My next selection is going to be etude number 5. This theme originally comes from an alto sax piece, alto sax and piano, called Prelude et Divertissement. It's a pretty slow alto sax solo. I think it's quite nice to listen to, and it evokes a lot of that improvisational style that the composer was going after. You can see on the right, this would have been what the bracketing would have looked like for my analysis of the piece. Beforehand, I would have taken it would have been a different color for the color code. For this version, it's just a simple bracket. Afterwards, I went ahead and I marked very small there, theme A, theme B, theme D. On this side, you'll see, again, more of those themes. I did not include all of the themes from that selection, just because it's basic. To begin with, I'll play the source material. Oh, good. No bad this time. 5 from the 18 etudes in the form of improvisation. And I'll pause there for the sake of time. Essentially, this one essentially just kind of plays itself. I would say, as far as my recording of the etudes and my knowledge of the etudes, this is a great capstone for the first section of the etudes. If I were to have a student performing through these etudes, I would pretty much make sure that if they can't play 5 in full without a whole lot of mistakes, they pretty much need to not be moving forward from that point. After 5, the etudes all become rather complicated, difficult, much more so than the initial 5, which is why I included it in this. Etude 9 takes us back a little bit into French horn land with its music. Etude 9 is essentially sur la scène, the cadential section from it, rather. Most of the sections from this etude are just straight up ripped up from sur la scène itself, except for the last 5 measures. I'm going to go ahead and play it. Rather, I'll play the sur la scène section first, that cadential section, so you get an idea of what it's supposed to sound like.
God knows as a virgin.
No, you don't. So this would have been from the end of the jig section, the dance section, right before the cadential section that it references. That's in the etude. I'll stop there for time's sake. For this purpose, I will play the entirety of etude number 9. play all the way through that etude was to show the last 5 measures of that etude. Horn players will recognize that the first majority of the etude comes from Surlicine. The last 5 just come straight from the muted section of Von Foray. One more time. This one actually does a better job of showing everything. The original etude sits in the middle. My analysis, bracketing rather, of the etude is on the right, and my analysis sits here on the left. My next selection from the group will be etudes 15 and 16. I grouped them together because 16 is one of the actually few times that it's not a through composed piece. 16 is essentially the melody from 15 just slowed down to a crawl. 16 is the slowest of the 18 solos. This is one of the few pieces where it almost seems like boats are copy-pasted from this rather than from the source material. You'll find this theme in an alto sax and piano piece written in 1964, Chanson Adversaire, for alto sax and piano. I believe I will go ahead and play that. We'll go ahead and play the alto sax piece now, just so you get an idea of what the theme sounds like. Afterwards, we'll go ahead and play the beginning of etude 15, so you can see how the two themes match up. I will not be playing the full from 15. And just to show you, here's etude 16, essentially the same theme, just slowed down. Nice. So the fun thing about 15 is essentially the second and third half of that etude are essentially a theme and variation on that theme. There's actually several options for you to go further into that piece with at least 3 different variations for each of the 2 segments. It actually makes it into quite a lengthy etude if you really wanted to go about it that way. The final selection of the 5 that I wanted to showcase to you guys today was etude 18, the final of the 18 etudes. This is the most rhythmically complex of of the 18, it is also the only one that requires a full 2 pages to fully play. Whereas all of the remaining 4 etudes that I showcased before all took place over maybe a page, maybe half a page and a half. I had to bracket this out into 2 different slides just to show you everything. This is just the 2 pages bracketed with my themes. I'm also going to play the segment of the excerpt that's included in here. It's so well buried into the texture that I didn't notice it until I started playing it, but there is Till Eulenspiegel somewhere in this etude. And it's not even like, oh, a wink and a nod, it's just full on in there. It's around somewhere in this theme B section. So when it came time for me to analyze this etude of the 18, I ran into a few issues in that there's no identifying theme within the first page. Not one that repeats itself anyway, or anything that makes itself super evident. That's like, I'm a theme, the thing after me is not that theme, it's just me alone. That doesn't exist in this etude. It's all super connected to itself. And the only way that I knew that it was a different section was when, oh, this is what Bose is trying to shoehorn in this orchestral excerpt in here. I'll play for you now just a brief from the Till Eulenspiegel horn excerpt after, of course, this plays. Oh, now I get a skip option. That's all you can hear right now. This is more towards the middle of Till Eulenspiegel when they're kind of going back and forth. Just for fun, this is Etude 18 from the 18 etudes in the form of improvisation for horn. After this follows a long cadential section. Giving a brief my analysis of the 18th etude. This is just to show more of my work. It's pretty self-explanatory, I believe. Okay, so moving on to my creation of the 3 etudes. My thought process was I could either go one of 2 routes. I could either redo the 18 etudes and do facsimiles of the original 18, or I could do it where it's more pedagogically focused towards his 5 pieces for horn and piano. I chose to go with the latter. There's still room to do either, and one of my pathways after giving this presentation and completing the degree is to finish the rest of those 18 etudes. My thought process for creating these is essentially take common motifs and to stretch them out and repeat them over and over again to help develop muscle memory in students. A lot of major points about Boats's music is just the formulation of concepts. So like, how well can you not necessarily triple tongue, but how well can you do a triple pattern? How well can you make a triplet pattern exist well amongst other notes around it and not seem like frantic or kind of sluggish. So that was my concept of putting these things into etudes. I also included, of course, some references to other works for horn, just to keep things a little bit more lively and fun. Okay. This is my first etude, just to show you. This is one based off of En Forêt. Essentially, you'll see that I take the bom, I take that theme and I essentially elongate it out. The first measure is bom, 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 and then I repeat it again to help the student develop clarity in articulating the low register. Dum, 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 da, da. Then the next measure, I incorporate some mid to high register stuff, da, da, dee, da, to eliminate that idea of a student getting kind of like framed within that low register setting and trying to go back and forth between the two and do it well. Still going after that clarity of low articulation. Da da dee da, da dum da dum dum dum. And I keep around the first 2 lines of this. I keep everything super open, a lot of open tones, to get that student's mind away from am I playing this in tune with itself, and they're more focused on just pure tone and clarity of articulation. Eventually I include some slow-moving triplets to kind of get that idea of rhythmic differentiation moving. Eventually, around measure 19, I expand into 16th note triplets. In my way, there's 2 ways of performing those. You can either do it as written, which is or you can do it in the way that you usually would do it for triplet patterns in En Forêt, which is di-a-da. Instead of doing ta-ta-ta, it's di-a-da, where the first 2 are slurred and the third is tongued. After which it kind of plays on itself for a little bit, increases in a scalar pattern leading up to measure 28, which is just a straight rip from En Forêt. And then immediately it goes into the descending 16th note patterns that we usually see in En Forêt. The conclusion of the 3/4 measure is to almost catch the student who's been playing a lot of fast tones up to this point. So usually what I would expect them is they hit that 3/4 and they just plow through it like it's just a bunch of 8 notes. And it'll force the student to kind of stay true to the rhythmic meter of the pattern. It finishes out in this Baroque kind of fanfare thing. I made this relatively short for students, but it still presents some challenges. Make sure I'll water down my instrument first before I even think about trying to attempt this. I'm going to play a few notes, and then this is etude number 1, labeled En Forêt by me. So moving on to the next etude is etude number 2, labeled On Airland, after the also titled On Airland piece by Eugene Botza. For this one, I played a little bit more with switching back and forth between crazy keys to kind of scare the student a little bit into actually looking and figuring out what they need to play for this. Most students tend to shy away from most things above 3 or 4 sharps, so of course I included a small section that had all 7. Also in 6/8, that immediately switches back to an F major, no sharps and no flats. There's some references to the cadential section from On Airland. It's supposed to give the student their first forays into playing in an improvisational style. This is not meant to scare the student. Well, I mean, the key signature is meant to scare the student, that's just for me. The cadential section towards the end is supposed to give that student a chance to do that before they get to playing the real piece for like Perosi's. There is an inclusion of some pedal notes towards the end. In my studies, I actually have found that most young students are able to play those notes and actually prefer to, so I included them here. This is etude number 2, titled On Airland, also by me. So that one will be actually a little bit more complicated and slightly more challenging than the first one. Obviously, the inclusion of the 7 sharps segment is obviously going to create some of its own issues. Having the student be able to play a high E and then a low pedal A afterwards is also going to create its own set of issues. I find that in my own pedagogy, there was not enough of an emphasis on being able to bounce back and forth between the extremes, and so I ended up creating sets for the 2 extremes, which is not the right way. The right way is to create one set that can do both, and so this will help show students that yes, it is possible to go from an E in the staff to a pedal A, and it's actually it's not easy, but it's doable, it's possible. There is also the reference to España by Vitaly Buyanovsky that it finds itself in measures 26 and 27. I'm sorry, I could not help myself. The final of the 3 etudes that I created for this series centers around the piece Sur la Cime, written by Botza. Let's see. In this etude, I was more going after differences in rhythmic quality and being able to stay, having integrity between the changing rhythmic patterns. There's also a couple of references to the famous Botza lick from, and immediately in this moment I'm blanking on the piece, but it's a very, very famous trumpet fanfare that happens. Rustiques. as soon as I sing it, it immediately comes back to mind. But it comes originally from Rustiques. You'll find that it's in a bunch of boats of pieces. It finds itself in the sonatine for brass quintet. It's also in Sur la Cime to a certain degree, although it may not be exactly as presented in this etude. Much like Boetz's inclusion of half-diminished seventh chords and augmented chords, I included some, particularly in measure 5. I believe everything is okay with this. I'm just kind of going about this a moment before I'm getting ready to perform it. This is etude number 3, also written by me, entitled Sur la Cime. So again, it's just going after those the difference in rhythmic qualities. Just from straight up the first couple of measures, it's if the student can't play one and one en and be able to do those two completely separate of each other and both sounding like their own distinct things, if they can't do that, I'm going to focus on that first measure and really just drill it into them being able to bounce back between a duple and a triple feel, which is pretty much the name of the game of this etude. So that concludes the bulk of my project as far as it goes. Obviously, with future research, I intend to continue to craft the rest of these remaining 18 etudes to finish out the full book of them. I would love to publish that collection of preparatory etudes centered on Boetz's works for the horn, probably along a recording of me doing all 18 of them. I would also like to publish an article, both in the Horn Call as well as a few other publications, detailing my process with recording these etudes and connections I found between my work and the work of Boetz's oeuvre. One of the fun things I think that can happen in the future is there's a ton of etude books that are from most wind instruments. And this phenomenon of adoptive transcription is not isolated to the horn world. So an alto sax player could be like, I want to go play a collection of 18 etudes for alto sax, and then I'm going to find some random, motif from Chat Montaigne for horn-piano that's dug way down deep. Wow, there's that connection that happens between it. I feel like the apex of this research could be this entire mangled web of all these different instruments, learning about where all these different motifs come from. For example, take the line from Chanson à Bercer, written for alto saxophone and piano in 1964, originally shows up in the 1961 collection of etudes. Where did that theme actually come from? That's a good question that could be answered by someone else, filling in a lot more of those connections, right? I don't believe that the Etude 15 is the genesis of that theme. I have a feeling it was created earlier in a different piece and then placed into there, and then he took it and used it in Chanson à Bercer earlier. So I feel like that's pretty much where this research is eventually going. As far as for my work with it, it'll just be finishing out this collection of etudes and publishing it, making it available for everyone. On that note, I think that's pretty much everything that I've got going on for this presentation today. Do you have any questions?
No.
Cool. Well, thank you for attending my lecture recital. It's been a joy to show this to you guys, and thank you for coming today.
Thank you, James.